On November 24, 2024, T.D. Jakes' voice suddenly stopped mid-sermon. His eyes rolled back, his skin turned gray, and 2.3 million viewers watched in horror as he collapsed. But the real shock came when doctors discovered what caused it. Now, as a $100 million lawsuit threatens his empire and dark rumors spread online, the untold story of Bishop Jakes' fight for survival and his reputation is coming to light. T.D. Jakes was born on June 9, 1957, in South Charleston, West Virginia. His parents, Ernest and Odith Jakes, raised him in a small, close-knit family. T.D. was the youngest of 3 children. His father worked very hard and built a cleaning business that employed over 40 people. He cleaned big places, like the West Virginia Capitol Building and grocery stores. His mother was a teacher who taught home skills like cooking and sewing. She made sure all her children learned these things, and they became very useful for T.D. later in life. When T.D. was a little boy, his family lived in Vandalia, a segregated community. It was a tough time in the 1960s because of racial tensions, but the Jakes' home was always full of learning and activity. Even though life seemed normal, things changed when T.D. was only 10 years old. His father got very sick with kidney disease. For the next 6 years, T.D. helped take care of him. It was a hard time for the family, but it taught T.D. a lot about suffering and compassion. He often stayed in his room during this time, preaching to his stuffed animals as if they were a big church crowd. This earned him the nickname Bible Boy, because he always carried a Bible and loved to talk about God. T.D. was very curious about God, even as a kid. One time, during a trip with his father, he learned that the earth is always moving, even when it feels still. This stuck with him and made him think about how God works in ways we don't always see. But T.D.'s path wasn't perfect. When he was a teenager, he went through a phase where he drifted from his faith. One night at a party, he started singing gospel songs, and something powerful happened. He felt the Holy Spirit so strongly that he ran out of the house. That moment brought him back to God and reminded him of his purpose. When T.D. was 16, his father passed away after years of battling kidney disease. It was heartbreaking for him. He started questioning God and felt angry and confused. At the same time, he had to take care of his family. His mother got sick too, and T.D. dropped out of high school just 2 months before graduation to look after her. Even though life was hard, he kept going. This tough time made him stronger and more understanding of other people's pain. It was during this difficult period that he felt called to become a preacher. Even though he was still hurting and had doubts, he knew this was what God wanted him to do. At 23, T.D. took a big step and started his first church. It was a small storefront in Montgomery, West Virginia, with just 10 members. He called it the Greater Emmanuel Temple of Faith. Back then, life wasn't easy. T.D. worked at a chemical plant during the day to support his family and the church. His wife, Sarita, also helped a lot by working as a DJ at a Christian radio station. They didn't have much money, but they made it work. Their church was small and simple. T.D. even played the piano for the choir himself. He often joked that on Easter Sunday, if they counted everyone, including pregnant women and the deceased, they might have had 40 people. Even though the church was tiny, T.D. had a special way of preaching that connected with people. He talked about real-life problems and gave people hope. The church slowly grew, and by 1983, T.D. held his first conference. Only 80 people came, but it was the start of something much bigger. Over time, his powerful messages about healing and hope would reach thousands, especially women who needed encouragement. In 1996, Bishop T.D. Jakes took a big step. He moved to Dallas, Texas, with just 50 families from his small church in West Virginia. On July 28th, he held the first service of the Potter's House in a rented building. Only 300 people attended, but it was the beginning of something huge. Within 6 months, 5,000 people were coming, and the church needed a bigger space. In December, Jakes bought a 28-acre property for $3.2 million. It used to be owned by another preacher, but now it became the home of the Potter's House. The first service there was incredible. Over 8,000 people showed up, filling every seat and standing in overflow areas. Jakes' powerful way of preaching and his message of hope touched everyone. By 1999, the church was growing so fast that they built a new sanctuary. It was massive, 191,000 square feet, and cost $45 million. It opened in July 2000, with space for 8,000 people. Incredibly, the church paid off the debt in just 4 years. The Potter's House wasn't just a church. It became a movement that changed lives all over the world. The growth of the Potter's House was amazing. By the end of 1997, the church already had 10,000 members. 2 years later, there were 20,000. In 2000, they started holding 3 Sunday services because so many people wanted to attend. Each week, over 23,000 people came. The church attracted people of all races and backgrounds, reflecting the diversity of Dallas. By 2005, membership had passed 30,000, making it one of the largest churches in America. The Potter's House didn't stop there. It opened campuses in other places, including Fort Worth and Denver. On New Year's Eve in 2010, the church broadcast its service to different locations, reaching over 40,000 people in one night. By 2020, with campuses across the U.S., the church had an average weekly attendance of 32,000. It became one of the most influential churches in the country. T.D. Jakes didn't only grow the church. He became a best-selling author and a filmmaker. His first major book, Woman, Thou Art Loosed, came out in 1993. It sold over 3 million copies and stayed on bestseller lists for 75 weeks. That book made Jakes famous as a writer, and he went on to publish over 40 books, selling more than 20 million copies. Some of his books even reached the #1 spot on major bestseller lists. In 2004, he turned Woman, Thou Art Loosed into a movie, which earned $6.8 million at the box office. His production company, TDJ Enterprises, made other movies, like Jumping the Broom and Heaven is for Real, which earned over $100 million worldwide. Jakes also had a television program called The Potter's Touch, which reached millions of people around the globe. In 2016, he even launched his own talk show and later partnered with Amazon to create a streaming channel for his sermons and other content. Jakes also built powerful organizations. T.D. Jakes Ministries started in 1995 and became famous for events like Woman, Thou Art Loosed, which grew into a massive conference. In 2004, over 52,000 people attended the event in Atlanta. Another event, MegaFest, drew more than 100,000 people and boosted local economies. His business arm, TDJ Enterprises, grew into a company with many divisions, including films, music, books, and real estate. In 2022, the company announced a $150 million real estate project in Atlanta. By 2023, TDJ Enterprises was earning over $500 million a year. In 2001, Time magazine called T.D. Jakes America's Best Preacher. This was a big moment. The article came just after the 9/11 attacks, when the nation needed hope. Time praised Jakes for his ability to connect with people and his message of healing. The cover story made Jakes even more famous. His TV audience grew, and his books sold even more copies. T.D. Jakes has achieved much more than being a pastor. He has been an advisor to U.S. presidents like George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. A big moment came on January 20th, 2009, when he led the morning prayer service for Barack Obama's inauguration. This was a historic day, as Obama became the first black president of the United States. Jakes didn't stop there. He also worked with world leaders like Ghana's President Rawlings, Nigeria's President Obasanjo, and King Abdullah of Jordan. In 2014, he attended a White House dinner for African leaders, and in 2015, he was there when Pope Francis visited the U.S. This shows how Jakes connects faith with politics and makes an impact globally. In 2015, Jakes started Conversations with America, which focused on big issues like racial inequality and criminal justice reform. He shared these ideas in a live forum in 2016, where he talked with MSNBC's Chris Matthews. This event was attended by many important people, including members of Congress and journalists, and it was streamed online to over 1 million viewers. This shows how Jakes blends spiritual leadership with action to solve real problems. Jakes is also a big name in Hollywood. His production company has made movies that earned more than $500 million worldwide. One of his hits was Jumping the Broom in 2011, which became the top comedy of the year. Another was Miracles from Heaven in 2016, starring Jennifer Garner. These movies proved that faith-based stories could succeed in mainstream entertainment. Jakes even had his own talk show in 2016, which, though short-lived, showed his ambition to reach more people. Jakes doesn't just make movies. He focuses a lot on helping people. In 2020, he started the T.D. Jakes Foundation to raise $100 million for underserved communities. In 2023, he partnered with Wells Fargo to create $1 billion in resources for these communities. By early 2024, $9 million had already been given to 16 organizations. The foundation helps people with housing, financial education, and job training. Jakes also started the Texas Offenders Re-Entry Initiative, TORI, which has helped over 42,000 former inmates rebuild their lives. This program offers job support, housing, and education, giving people a second chance. The Potter's House, Jakes' church, also works hard to help in tough times. After Hurricane Katrina in 2005, Jakes joined President George W. Bush to visit the disaster areas. The church's MegaCare program has helped during many disasters, like the Haiti earthquake in 2010. During COVID-19, they distributed thousands of meals to families in need. Jakes is also a smart businessman. His real estate company builds affordable housing and improves communities. In 2023, he partnered with a developer in Miami to create housing for families. He also writes books, like his bestseller Crushing, and runs leadership programs to inspire others. His International Leadership Summit gathers thousands of people to learn about business and leadership. Meanwhile, T.D. Jakes has been in the middle of debates about what he believes about the Trinity for years. People started questioning him in the late 1990s because he used the word manifestations instead of persons when talking about the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. This made some theologians think he believed in modalism, which says God is just one person showing up in three different ways, not three distinct persons. The controversy exploded in 2012 when Jakes attended the Elephant Room Conference. Pastors James MacDonald and Mark Driscoll asked him directly about his beliefs. Jakes said, "One God, three persons," which sounded like he was agreeing with traditional beliefs. But then he added he didn't like the word persons and preferred manifestations, calling it a term from the Bible. This left people confused. Even after this, his church's website still used the word manifestations, which upset critics. Some thought he was trying to change his views, while others believed he was just avoiding criticism. A theologian in 2016 said Jakes still used language that made people unsure about what he really believed. Because of this, many conservative Christians continue to question him. Jakes has also faced backlash from traditional churches for what he teaches and how he preaches. A big issue is his connection to the Word of Faith movement, which many believe spreads false teachings. In 2001, it was reported that Jakes told viewers on a Trinity Broadcasting Network fundraiser that giving money would lead to blessings like wealth, good relationships, and success. This message clashed with the traditional Christian view of giving as an act of faith, not a way to get something in return. In 2015, Jakes caused a stir by saying, "If you obey God, you will never be broke another day in your life." Critics said this was an oversimplified and dangerous message about money. His sermons often mix motivational speaking with Bible teachings, which some say feels more like self-help than true preaching. In 2007, during a live sermon, he shocked viewers by speaking in tongues without giving an interpretation, something the Bible says should not happen. Jakes has also been accused of not talking enough about sin and repentance. In a 2019 interview, he criticized white evangelicals for focusing too much on abortion and same-sex marriage, and not enough on social justice. This upset many conservative leaders who started calling him a false teacher. Another controversy around Jakes is the prosperity gospel. Many believe he teaches that faith and obedience lead to wealth and success. His lifestyle adds to this criticism. In 2005, reports showed he lived in a $1.7 million mansion, drove fancy cars, and wore designer suits, which critics said was the opposite of Jesus' teachings on living simply. In one sermon, Jakes said, "People need spiritual prosperity before they can have financial prosperity." Critics say this connects spiritual maturity with wealth, which is misleading. A 2017 tweet from Jakes promised, "If you obey God, you will never be broke another day in your life." Stories have even surfaced of church members giving all their savings to the ministry and struggling financially afterward. Jakes denies being a prosperity preacher, but his actions, like starting a program to train 1,000 millionaires, make people question his motives. While he says his teachings aim to help people break free from poverty, many believe his message twists the gospel and benefits him more than his followers. T.D. Jakes' views on LGBTQ+ issues have changed a lot over the years, which has caused both praise and backlash. In the early 2000s, he called homosexuality brokenness and said it could be caused by bad parenting or abuse. But in 2015, during an interview, he surprised many when he said the Black church and LGBTQ+ community could coexist and that every church and gay person was different. Some people thought this meant he supported same-sex relationships, and the backlash was so strong that Jakes had to clarify he did not support same-sex marriage. In 2021, he criticized white evangelicals for focusing too much on issues like same-sex marriage and ignoring poverty and racial justice, showing a shift in his priorities. Then, in a 2022 sermon, Jakes said traditional gender roles no longer fit modern times. Although he didn't directly talk about LGBTQ+ issues, this showed he was willing to challenge long-held views. Conservatives have distanced themselves from him because of these shifts, but progressives and LGBTQ+ advocates see him as becoming more accepting. Bishop T.D. Jakes, the famous pastor of the Potter's House in Dallas, was suddenly linked to a big lawsuit involving music mogul Sean "Diddy" Combs. On March 25, 2024, record producer Rodney "Lil Rod" Jones filed a lawsuit accusing Combs of terrible crimes. What shocked people was a claim on page 47 of the lawsuit. It said Combs planned to use his connection with Bishop Jakes to fix his public image after Cassie Ventura, his ex-girlfriend, accused him of abuse. This mention of Jakes surprised everyone and raised questions about his relationship with Combs. The lawsuit didn't explain how Combs planned to involve Jakes, so people started guessing. Jakes and Combs had worked together before. In 2021, Jakes brought his Kingdom Culture sermons to Revolt TV, which was co-founded by Combs. In 2022, Jakes attended Combs's fancy birthday party. These events made people wonder if their relationship was deeper than it seemed. The lawsuit hinted that Combs thought Jakes could use his influence as a respected pastor to help him escape public backlash. This idea shocked both the church world and the entertainment world. The situation got worse when, in late 2023, rumors started spreading online. Some posts claimed Jakes had attended private parties hosted by Combs, but these claims had no proof. Still, the rumors caused more damage to Jakes' reputation. At first, Jakes stayed quiet about the allegations, and that made people more curious. But on April 15, 2024, he finally spoke during a Sunday sermon streamed to millions of viewers. He said the accusations were lies meant to destroy his work as a pastor. Jakes told his congregation he had nothing to do with Combs' alleged crimes. He called the allegations an attack on his ministry and promised to fight back. A few days later, on April 18th, Jakes filed a $100 million lawsuit against Rodney "Lil Rod" Jones for defamation. He said the lawsuit's claims were false and had damaged his reputation deeply. Jakes also went after YouTube channels that were spreading rumors about him. On May 2, 2024, he filed lawsuits demanding $50 million from each channel and asked YouTube to reveal who was behind them. He believed these channels were using AI to create fake stories about him. Jakes didn't stop there. To show he had nothing to hide, he set up an independent board of trusted leaders and legal experts to investigate the allegations. He gave them full access to his church records and personal files. To prove his honesty, Jakes even took a lie detector test, and the results were made public on July 15, 2024. He also opened the church's financial records for everyone to see and started new rules like background checks for senior leaders every year. On November 24, 2024, Bishop T.D. Jakes was preaching to a massive crowd at the Potter's House in Dallas. Over 12,000 people were there in person, and more than 2.3 million were watching online. His sermon, Strength in Weakness, had gone on for about an hour. Then, something shocking happened. At exactly 10:37 a.m., as he said the words, "O Lord, my strength, my Redeemer, let them go in peace," his voice stopped. The microphone fell from his hand and hit the floor with a loud noise that silenced the entire church. Jakes started shaking uncontrollably. His tall frame, usually full of energy, was trembling. His eyes rolled back and his skin turned gray. The live stream caught every detail, and for nearly a minute, he struggled to breathe. The congregation was in shock. People began praying loudly, some even speaking in tongues. The panic spread fast. 3 elderly members fainted from the stress. To make it more tragic, this happened on the exact day the Potter's House was founded 28 years earlier, turning a day of celebration into one of fear. The response from the church was quick. Dr. Mariah Stevenson, a cardiologist sitting in the front row, rushed to Jakes within seconds. She started checking his pulse and shouted instructions. Marcus Washington, the head of security, immediately activated the church's emergency plan, called Operation Shepherd's Staff. This cleared the sanctuary, with 3,000 people evacuated quickly to make room for help. At the same time, usher Sarah Martinez ran through the crowd to grab the AED, reaching it in less than 30 seconds. Paramedics arrived 4 minutes later. They worked fast, stabilizing Jakes with emergency medication and an IV. The church's helipad, installed just a year and a half earlier, made a huge difference. A helicopter arrived shortly after and flew Jakes to Methodist Dallas Medical Center. The flight took just 7 minutes, but every second felt like an eternity for those watching. At the hospital, Jakes underwent a long 9-hour surgery. His recovery was intense. He needed 47 units of blood and had 3 additional procedures. He stayed in the ICU for 17 days, with a team of nurses caring for him around the clock. On December 18th, just 24 days after the incident, Jakes made his first public appearance in a video call to his congregation. His message was short but powerful. He told them he had faced a life-threatening challenge, but was recovering. That video alone raised over $4 million for the hospital's cardiac unit. Jakes worked hard to heal. He spent hours every day in physical therapy, guided by one of the best specialists. He also tried advanced oxygen therapy and followed a strict diet planned by nutritionists. Even while recovering, Jakes stayed busy. He wrote a new book called Reborn, Finding Strength in Life's Valleys. He dictated the entire book from his hospital bed, and when it was released 3 months later, it became an instant hit, selling over 2 million copies in the first week. On New Year's Eve, Jakes returned to the pulpit. Over 18,000 people came to see him in person, and another 11 million watched online. He looked thinner, but full of energy. His sermon, The Comeback King, was emotional and inspiring. People in the audience cried as they listened, feeling the power of his words. It was a moment of triumph and hope, showing everyone that even after the hardest trials, you can rise again. T.D. Jakes met Sarita Jameson in a small church in West Virginia. It was 1982, and T.D., only 23, was a guest preacher. Sarita, 26, was instantly drawn to him. Their connection was so strong that just 6 months later, they got married on May 29, 1982. From that moment, their journey together began, filled with love and challenges as they stepped into a life under the spotlight. Over the years, they built a family with 5 children: Sarah, Cora, Jermaine, Thomas Jr., and Jamar. Raising kids is never easy, but doing it in front of the world brought its own problems. In 2009, their son Jermaine made headlines when he was arrested for indecent exposure. It was a hard time for the family, but they pulled through. Despite moments like this, their kids have done well. Sarah, born in 1988, is now a well-known author, preacher, and mother of 6. Thomas Jr., born in 1994, has made a name for himself as a music producer and media personality. In 1998, T.D. Jakes moved his ministry to Dallas, Texas. This was a big change for the whole family. Moving to a new city and adjusting to a new life wasn't easy for Sarita and the kids, but they stood by each other. By 2024, T.D. and Sarita celebrated 42 years of marriage, with T.D. calling Sarita his ride-or-die soulmate. Their love stayed strong through all the ups and downs. T.D. Jakes didn't just focus on his family. His work kept him busier than most people could imagine. His church, the Potter's House, started small in 1996, but grew into a mega-church with thousands of members. At its peak, he preached 4 long services every weekend while writing books, producing movies, and releasing music. By 2024, he had written over 40 books, released nearly 20 albums, and created countless films. In 2018, he traveled to 16 countries and delivered more than 150 sermons. This kind of work meant he often missed important family moments. He admitted in one interview that he wasn't there for his son's high school graduation, something he regretted. Even though his schedule was packed, T.D. found ways to bring his family into his work. Sarita became a leader at their church, running women's ministries. Their daughter Sarah Sarita followed in his footsteps, becoming a pastor and writer. But life still tested their strength. In 2012, Sarita had surgery for a herniated disc. During her recovery, TD had to juggle his work and caring for her, which reminded him how important family is, no matter how demanding life gets.